Hi students, how are you doing today? So welcome to Zizix training. Yeah, in our previous classes in our series, we've gone through these topics and we got up to escape characters, comments, data types. The last one we looked at on our video, the full tutorial on this series was concatenation, and then we went on to talk about input variables, concatenation and input. Then we discussed casting. Okay, yeah, but today we'll talk a bit about indentation and functions particularly. So we'll discuss functions, why we have functions, what functions are, and the different implementations of functions and how helpful functions can be. So we'll talk about basic functions, we'll talk about functions with parameters, we'll talk about pass keyword, and I think that will cover up for this video. So let's get started. So let's start by creating a file called functions.py. Okay, so imagine, let me get something from variable. Okay, so say we have different, I should close this. Yeah, I'll close this as well. So say we have different blocks of codes. Maybe this one is asking for location, this one is asking for age, something. So let's change this to location, age, and we can remove this and we print location and age here. Yeah, and so let me just print this one and be nationality. Okay, what's your nationality? And we can remove these ones. We can just ask nationality here. Okay, my nationality. So here is what I've done. Let me just remove this so that we have more space to look at. So here is what I've done. We have different snippets, different lines of codes, and if we try to print this here, so nothing wrong with the code. So first name, Brenda, last name Santana, age 69. Yes, and it goes ahead to ask the second one. We copied and pasted. What's your location? So let me just say Canada. What's your, this should be age, so let me just say 50 this time. Okay, my name is whatever. So I'm just trying to implement something so we get to understand. So what's your nationality? Botswana. Okay, your nationality is Botswana. So you see different sections of codes being printed out. You may not want all these sections to be printed out. The way we avoid this would be we try to comment this sometimes so that we focus on just the first two being printed. So this way you can ask for name, Brenda Santana, and age 100. So that is it. But why am I showing you this? Why did I have to start this functions class like this? One of my students particularly told me functions is the most difficult topic I would ever have to learn. Probably he learned from maybe from a text or something, or someone who couldn't really explain it, but I'll try my best here to explain it. You know, our strength is being able to explain complex topics and make it really easy for even novices to work with. So now the whole essence of functions, first of all, is to be able to organize and group codes into meaningful parts. Okay, there are theoretical definitions of functions, like a function is a block of code, but I mean, will you easily understand that? Imagine we had hundreds of lines of different snippets, implementations of variables, of input statements, of different kinds of statements, and they just look scattered on your screen. So how do you actually organize them into groups? Okay, so function is a way of organizing um, related codes into blocks, into groups. Okay, and the beauty about functions is you don't need to comment out anything. Functions get to be implemented when they are called. So if you don't call a function, it doesn't implement. For example, you have electricity in your building and you have a flat battery on your phone. I mean, there is electricity in your house. So, but if you don't take that step to charge your phone will not get charged automatically. So you can have electricity, so to say, you can have a function and you don't call it, so it won't call itself, it won't display, it won't print out, it won't give the functionality except you actually call it. Okay, just like the scenario, except you actually uh, plug in your phone, charge it, and use the electricity to just be there, wasted, or maybe just there. So functions are like that. You can create functions and they are just there. Okay, and when you are ready to use it, when you are ready to use them, you get to use them. So I want you to understand it from that part. So with these scattered blocks of codes, we could have stopped commenting them. We could have created functions and wrapped them down. Maybe you could have said, this is how to create functions, def, the def keyword, and I could have said person detail, right? And that's my function name. And the way to make sure that this group of code belong to this function is to, I highlight it, then I use my tab key on the keyboard. Okay, so it taps one and it just gets into this, just like some of you coming from other programming languages background like Java, you would have something like this open, or even PHP, and you close it here. So let me push this down so that it doesn't confuse you. Now, functions in Python, since they don't have this opening and closing braces, so what they make do is actually, since they don't have this closing braces, so we remove this closing brace and we remove this, so we use colon instead here. Okay, that's a Python function. Now what Python function takes make sure, what Python function ensures you do is indentation. With other functions, let me bring that Java function back. With other functions, it's okay to do something like this. So the program understands that there was a curly brace there and there is another one here, which is a closing curly brace. So no matter how you scatter your code in between like this, it doesn't matter. Okay, so what matters for other programming languages like PHP and the rest is you have this JavaScript, you have this, and you have this. So it understands that this is the beginning of the function and the function actually ends here. But with Python, what you should ensure is, because we don't have this closing brace, Python takes indentation like a really serious matter. I told one of my students it takes indentation like a family problem, a family matter. So you don't joke with it. So we had an indentation part here. I didn't explain it because there's no better way to explain it except using functions. So indentation is a way of pushing codes, okay, lines or blocks of codes one step forward to be within a particular block or function. Okay, so how do you do this? So if your block of code is here, you can use tab key on your keyboard once instead of using. It's not advisable to do this. Don't use your space bar. So ensure that you use your tab key instead. If you are here already, Python will Visual Studio Code will put it in the proper place, right? So you indent your code so that they will be in the same block. You don't have to indent twice, right? Make sure they are well indented. And the good thing about indentation is it makes it readable, really readable, and you understand that it actually starts here and ends here. So anything within any other thing you type here is still within the function, but anything you type here is outside of the function because it's assumed that there is a bracket here. Okay, so I hope you understand this explanation. I really took time to do that. So back to what we were talking about. So we could have had function there and have another one here. Let me remove this white space. Have another function here and properly indent this one inside. So these are function 2. Let me just say person location, and let me comment this so that it will be easier. So detail, and this is second function, location, and this is a third one. So let me paste this, and remember you indent once using your keyboard tab key, and person nationality. Yeah, hope I spelled that right. So we can comment this nationality. So here we go. We have 3 good functions. Okay, let me reduce this so that they get, yeah. So we have 3 good functions: person detail, person location. Oh, I didn't spell this well. Person location and special nationality. Now, these are different blocks of code. This is the first block of code grouped together, grouping a set of code that are related together. This is another block of code, person location, starting from line 10 to line 14. And we have the last block of code starting from line 17 to line 20, right? So these are 3 different functions. So if I run this program again, what do you think will happen? Guess for a minute. What will print? Which of the functions will print? Guess for 30 seconds. All right, so actually none will print. So we have our code. This was the previous one. This is the latest, this one, this line. So nothing prints. Let me clear the screen again and try printing py functions dot py. The code is running without any issues, but nothing prints. Remember the explanation I gave? You have light, but you've refused to power your laptop. So how will it get automatically powered? So the thing is, until you call a function, until you power your laptop, that's when it's, until you plug the charger to the socket, that's when it will power your laptop. So in this scenario, until you call a specific function, that is when a function will work. Otherwise, it's just there until you call it. And of course, this is not a disadvantage. This is actually an advantage, because you don't need to print functions. You don't need to print things when you don't need them. You print them when you actually need them. So let's say we want to call the second one person location. All you have to do is get out of all the functions, and let's just say call functions. So get out of all the functions and just call person location. And remember, we have a bracket here. You don't need this colon. So just put that bracket, and that's it. That's all. So it calls this one. It actually implements what's on the second one. That's what is your location, right? And what is your age. So my location location is location, and age is, yeah, and age is age, right? So let's print that again. So it's asking me, what is your, why is it still asking me what's your age name? Let me see that. We are printing which one? Function person location, which is this one. All right, so let's make sure we terminate that and by functions. Okay, so it's asking me what is your location, which is this line 11, right? So my location is Brazil. What's your age? 20. And your location is Brazil and age is 20. So it prints this particular function. You can print multiple functions. You can print this first one. You can print the last one. Let's print this first one. Yeah, so we can print the two of them, and let's print that. So what's your location? The first one is printing, and my location is Uruguay. And what's your age? 25. So it's done with the first function. It's asking for the second one, right? So what's your name? Larry Thompson. And your age? 45. So you see, so these two functions get printed because we want them to be printed. Okay, so I hope you understand the easy way to functions. It's really nice to work with functions. Okay, it's really nice working with functions, and it might be a confusing topic at first, but I mean, as you program, you can't do without functions. You can't actually do without functions. And let me just mention beforehand that functions are called functions when we are working with procedural pattern like we are working now. Okay, there are different patterns we can work with. So there is an object-oriented pattern. I have another video here on is it Java object-oriented programming. Okay, so that's another pattern. So when we use functions on procedural patterns, we can safely call them functions, technically call them functions, right? And we are correct. We are not wrong with that. But when we are working with object-oriented programming, OOP, and we create functions, technically they should not be called functions there. They should be called methods. Okay, so you call them methods, but they are actually functions. They do everything. They are just functions in all sense. Okay, right? But because they are within classes in object-oriented programming design patterns, so they are called methods. Technically, that's technically right. You call them methods if you are working with OOP. So I'm safely calling them functions here because this is not OOP. We are just working with the procedural part, right? So this is nice, and I hope you understand this first part of functions. In our second part, or let me just show you so you get a deeper knowledge on it. Let me work on another function, very simple. So functions2 functions2.py. All right, so let's take it from a fresh page. So let's say we have a function. We want to create a function that greets a user welcome, right? So we can name our function. Remember, def is just like define, okay? But it's a Python keyword which is for function, right? So def, and let's call it greet, right? So it will greet the user. So what we do is print you are welcome. So it simply greets the user, right? So we have function greet you are welcome. So this works well, but nothing is printed. Okay, I know you obviously know the reason now. So all you need to copy this and paste it here. Okay, so it greets the user. So once you do that, it will actually say you are welcome. Okay, so we can create more functions like this. We can have, say we are working on a car, okay, and we have functions. So think about functions also like verbs, action words, okay, functions as verbs in English or action words. Okay, so imagine a car, creating functions for car. So what would you do? In a car, you can accelerate. Okay, so we have a function called accelerate, right? Okay, and you can just print. Let me take a note of what came to my mind now. All right, so we can print the car is accelerating. Okay, accelerating. I'm sure. All right, so we can have another function. Okay, so first and foremost, you can start the car, right? So the car is starting. Okay, and the next thing would be to how would I call this? Change gear. Yeah. Okay, so the car has changed its gear. Okay, so we can make this more interacting, and we have the last one. Yep, brakes. Yeah, brake. The car has come to a stop. Okay, so we can have different functions. So consider these as verbs: start, change gear, accelerate, brake, clutch, this and that, So these are different verbs, okay, and we use them as functions, okay. So this works, but if I'm asking again, I know you are my professional students now, so will it print anything? No, because we've created the functions, but we've not called the functions. So you have to understand how functions work. So first and foremost, I get into my car and calling the functions. All right, so first and foremost, I get into my car, and what I do is the car. Yeah, let me just leave that. All right, so I start the car, and what is happening? The car is starting, right? So let's just put this. So that car is starting. There is no better way to learn programming than to learn it with live things, something, how can I call it, with live scenarios, okay, everyday thing. Okay, you can use kitchen, you can practice with things in the office just to make sure that you understand it better. Not all the time has to be hello world, has to be fixed to the programming world. Okay, you can move it a bit into reality and understand it from that aspect. It's easier once you can do it yourself. Okay, so be creative. It mustn't be exactly what I've given, so be creative and come up with something unique, right? So the car is starting. Yep. Okay, so I think we need py functions 2.py just to print it. So the car is starting, and if I want to change the gear, which should be the next appropriate thing to do, to change it from a stop, or from the normal waiting gear to change it from the normal stop gear to gear 1, or move, create drive. So it will, the car is starting, right? And the next thing, you change the gear. So the car has changed its gear. So as you continue to call the different functions, the different activities, why am I pasting it here? The different actions begin to play out, right? I mean, you don't need to call them accordingly. You can change their the way you call them, right? So let me call it again. So this one starts by saying the car has come to a stop. The car is starting. The car has changed its gear. The car. So I mean, you can change the way you call functions. It doesn't have to be exactly how it was created, right? So that is all for this part. I wanted to make it a bit short, but is it short enough? Let's get. So I'll continue the functions on the next part. So we are done with this basic functions, right? We are done with this. So we'll continue with functions. I will just bring in that thing that came to my mind, which is very, very important. Let me cut this out. And yeah, it's proper to put it here. So we'll talk about return statements, return versus print with functions, right? So I'll discuss this in our next tutorial. Okay, the functions may have up to 3 or 4 tutorials. It's a big topic, so make sure you understand it so that you have a good foundation moving on as a programmer. All right, so I love you all. See you in the next tutorial. Thank you very much.